Brian had the good vision, and then he got Scott, who could play quirky stuff.
Scott was hopeless, though.
Well,
Brad was the band.
Yeah, but
Scott is a good player, but image-wise, he was hopeless. Brad was the guy. He was the man. Definitely.
All right, well, that's coming from a girl who had a crush on the guy at the time.
All the girls had a crush on fucking
But
Brad
I mean, they all come.
And they had this long-haired fucking freak transvestite bass player that all the girls used to love. He was like a cross between like the Spice Girls and fucking Winger. And as soon as he started shooting up heroin, he's like the only one in the band, I think, that did all these drugs. They gave him the boot. Goodbye, you're gone.
Brad was definitely, I think, had the Marilyn Manson image, which Marilyn Manson was trying to show. Like do drugs and be a rock and roll star and all that, and that was Brad entirely.
They got rid of Brad because he did drugs, but then they ended up like being the band that I mean, not the band, but they're like, you know, they totally drugs are cool.
I remember when Brad was on his way out of the band, he got to record on Portrait, the first album, down here, and he was actually out in LA too, but Brian was just like at wit's end with him at that time, just because it was, you know, if he wasn't out trying to score heroin the night before, then, you know, he was looking for it that day in the studio, and these trampy, sleazy women are coming by the studio, and, you know, every day there was something else, and it was like killing Brian because Brad was like his best friend. Brad was completely like his best friend, and he was the one with the style and with the girls, and he was, you know, Mr. Casanova, and, you know, he was great. Brian loved him. They spent a lot of time together, but then Brad was just going down, down, down. You could tell, and, you know, if he wasn't falling off the stage because he was so high, you know, in the middle of a show, then it was something else, or he wasn't showing up to practice, or whatever.
I remember seeing the last show they did with Brad, and I knew it was going to be the last show they did with Brad. I think it was at the +5. He was just really messed up. It was really sad. And, I mean, I felt bad, because, I mean, here he is, he's part of this band that are going to make it, and he just couldn't get his act together. And, so it's like, kind of on the one hand, I thought, well, it's really cool that the band is, you know, intolerant of drug abuse. You know, I don't think they're intolerant of drug use, but drug abuse certainly. And I know Brian was always really concerned about Missy and the friends that she would hang out with. You know, a lot of heroin use going on in the clubs. And, but then you hear stories about themselves, and so I don't know what the real story is, you know. Well, you know, are they hypocrites, or did they fall off a wagon themselves, or, you know, dabble a little bit, or, you know, you don't know what to really believe.
One time Brian needed a ride to go to see Brad. And Brad was actually in rehab, and Brian was just like, you know, I don't think I can tell him that he's not going to be in the band now. At this place, you know, a kid will just die. So we went to go see him, and what happened was Brian came back and he was just like in tears. And he's like, I couldn't do it. And he's like, you know, I'm losing my best friend. I'm losing a band member. He's like, this sucks. And he just came back and he was just like bawling, and it was horrible. But, you know, shortly after that, they had like an intervention with him that never helped. And then after that, he was out of the band, but he still, you know, recorded on Portrait. He never toured with them or anything, but that was that.
Some of the decisions Manson made in the early days are coming back to haunt him in the form of lawsuits. Ex-band members who want some credit for Marilyn Manson's success.
You see Brian, he's on TV every 13 seconds, and Scott helped him get to that point. I mean, he played on the first 3 albums and everything, and you know, the guy, you know, he has to drive like a beat-up car and stuff. I think he deserves at least, you know, at least something, at least what he's owed. And I think it's terrible that he has to go to court to get what he's owed.
Scott in New Orleans was pretty much the butt of everyone's jokes, sadly enough. But Scott is just, from my point of view, Scott's a really hard person to work with. I think he's stubborn. He when he has his mindset in one